life of Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was born in Boston, Massachusetts on January 19, 1809 to two actors, Elizabeth Arnold Hopkins and David Poe Jr. He had an older brother, William Leonard Poe, and a younger sister, Rosalie Poe. The former became a poet and died young of tuberculosis, and the latter grew up to become a teacher at a girls' school. Their family dispersed when Edgar's mother died from tuberculosis when he was 2 years old. Prior, his father disappeared. Edgar was taken into the family of John and Frances Valentine Allen, who lived in Richmond, Virginia. As a tobacco merchant, John Allen provided for Edgar and attempted to raise him as a businessman. But the desire of young Edgar's heart always hearkened to poetry, wanting to be like British poet Lord Byron. By age 13 he had started to answer that calling, despite the differences between himself and John Allen. In 1826, Allen supported Poe while he attended the University of Virginia to study Latin and French, but only for one term, whereupon Poe took up gambling to try to pay off debts. He was forced to return home, where further heartbreak him his fiancée Sarah Elmira Royster had been promised to another man in his absence. The following year, Poe began a short-lived military career and enlisted into the army as Edgar A. Perry. That same year, at the age of 18, he cultivated his first collection of poetry, Tamerlane, and other poem, and got it published. After 2 years as a private soldier, he experienced another loss in his life, the death of his adopted mother, Frances Valentine Allen, to tuberculosis. At 21, with the help of John Allen, Poe entered the military academy at West Point, but he only spent 8 months there. He intentionally got himself thrown out, in order to pursue his literary passion. And he publishes his third collection simply titled Poems in the Aftermath. For a brief period afterward, he called Baltimore, Maryland, his home, and lived with his aunt, Maria Clam, and his cousin, Virginia, who at 13 married him. They cohabitated with his grandmother, Elizabeth Poe, and his brother. When John Allen passed away in 1834, he left Edgar nothing. So, for the rest of this life Poe struggled financially and moved a lot to find work. Although we commonly associate Poe with being a writer of his own original imaginings, he made his living mainly by criticizing others. He was known as a fearless critic for his brash reviews, which started at the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond. Between 1835 and 1845, Poe tried to fight poverty by moving from Virginia to New York City to Philadelphia and back to New York in order to find magazine work, while attempting to write novels and poetry on the side. While living in Philadelphia in 1839, his first book of short stories, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, was published by Lee and Blanchard. But it wasn't until 1845, when Wiley and Putman, New York, entered the literary world, that Poe's name began to draw attention. Not only did people gather for his lectures, but he had also gained the credibility to ask for more money for his work. As one aspect of his life came together, though, another fell apart. In 1942, tuberculosis struck his wife Virginia, like so many others on his past, and in 1847 she died at age 24. In those 5 years, Poe turned to alcoholic to ease his devastation. In the 2 years that followed Virginia's death, Poe reconnected with and engaged Elmira Royster Sheldon, who was widowed, in Richmond. He traveled to lecture and find people to support his magazine endeavor, The Stylus. Much mystery surrounds Poe's death in 1849. On a trip from Richmond to Philadelphia, he briefly stopped in Baltimore, where his whereabouts went unknown for days. He was found in a bar on October 3 and passed away at Washington College Hospital in a coma, on October 7. His body resides now next to his wife Virginia's in Baltimore, where his literary masterpieces but also the city itself.